Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's Google Digital Garage training session on digital marketing strategy in partnership with the Irish SME Association. So I hope you're all having a lovely morning. And before we begin the session, I'd like to take a couple of minutes just to simply introduce myself and equally explain a couple of the session objectives for today. So my name is Amy, and I'm an account manager at Google for the past 4 years, working across the retail industry. So multiple verticals such as health, beauty, fashion, home, you name it. So I'd also like to introduce our moderator, Kirsty, who will be here with you today as a Google Digital Garage coach, and will be interacting with you and answering questions through some of the instant chat network here on the side. You can identify as well with any questions that you have throughout the various different sessions, and we'll be happy to answer. A quick bit of housekeeping as well, just to make sure you're all up to speed. So we want to call out a couple of things. If you're having any issues with viewing this webinar, please hit refresh on the top of the page, and equally just double check the URL and hit refresh should do the trick. If you'd like to join the instant chat today, you do need a YouTube account. So in order to do this, it can be done very easily on setup by clicking the box on the right here. We'll be pausing as well throughout the session to answer some questions and equally asking you some. So do feel free to fire away with your questions throughout. So what will we help you with today? We'll help you to further understand digital marketing and what that means, learn more about digital marketing channels, and equally build a digital marketing plan. So an introduction to digital marketing to start with. What opportunities might you get from being online? So what I'd love to see here is anybody taking the opportunity to chime in on the live chat on the side and pop in some opportunities that you might think would be benefited from coming online as a business. And as we move through the session, we'll take a look at those that come through. So in terms of the digital marketing landscape today, we live in a mobile world, as we all know. And would you believe, in Ireland, 65% of people are currently buying online. We know that there's also been a huge surge in traffic and in terms of the e-commerce side of things this year, especially due to COVID. So being online and being present is fundamental to running businesses today. We also know that this mobile world consists of 3.8 billion smartphones are being used today globally. It's a huge, huge number. And mobile traffic accounts for 52.6% of global web traffic. So people really are living in the smartphone, to put it that way. Mobile in particular is changing as well how we act and behave as human beings. And we've never, ever been as connected as before. So we've pretty much got it in our hands to answer any questions that we have with the power of online research. And of course, that's only going to grow and become stronger. Ireland, to call out as well, is now the 42nd largest market for e-commerce across the globe, with a revenue of, in terms of dollar value, $3 billion in 2020 alone from an e-commerce point of view. So again, reiterating the point that lots of the Irish consumer force here are buying online. And again, that point to make 65% of people, so well over half the population, have bought at least one product online last year. And I don't know about you, but I can definitely vouch for that. So reaching more people online, how can we help bring this forward to you today, and how can we help you out? We want to help you learn more about your customers, so understanding the deeper granularity of how they behave, how they carry out a purchase pattern, and what does this mean then for your activity that you could use online to further optimize towards that. Digital marketing has absolutely opened up a world of data to us, and we can make great decisions off the back of that. We can find out about people who visited our website, which helps us understand what kind of consumers are coming to us and how do we tailor for resonance within our various different product sets or services that you offer today. It'll also help us understand more, and as time goes along, what we can do differently, what does work, what doesn't work. And insights can help all marketing become much more relevant. And as a consumer, we all know relevant content is best. There are also many other social media insight tools available that you can use to understand the demographics of your business page. You can also use these to find out what type of people like your social media content, and use this information again to tailor your social media content to suit the audience. You can see here from the graph above that we can learn more about our customers through Google Analytics as a key tool. So Google Analytics allows us to observe, again, the touch points that a customer has made on our website and understand things like bounce rates, time spent on site, which are very valuable insights. Communicating and supporting the customer better with various insights as such, whether that be from your social media channels or again, the use of Google Analytics to gain more deeper understanding on your website, we can understand then how to communicate and support the customer better. So taking all of this into account can again tailor your posts, tailor your ads, your ad copy, and again, build on that pattern of making a more optimized ad for further conversion of either a sale of a product or a service for you. In the various different marketing channels, we do know the benefit of digital marketing for business in the fact that it allows us to become more available and accessible essentially with our customer. And there are multiple channels to be able to do this. So a couple of the key channels to consider for digital marketing here are shown on the slide I have in front. So we've got search engine optimization, which is essentially optimizing your website so that it shows up more often on the Google search page. This is essentially an unpaid option. When we look at search engine marketing, which is different, noted as SEM in the wider landscape, this is where you pay for advertising to appear in the search engine landscape, where you use the mechanism of bidding and using different keywords to attract the customer. Social media marketing, SMM, this is using social networks to gain traffic, gain attention of new people, and also reach existing or prospect out to new customers. We've also got the option of display marketing, an online advertising method where we can place ads among different websites across the board, where people are leaning in, reading, researching. Email marketing, another great way of getting a message out to your customer. Collecting and using email addresses to communicate with users is essentially the format. And content marketing. So this is the basis of creating and sharing different types of posts, videos, guides, infographics to attract attention and drive traffic. So I can see there we've had some responses as well within our chat. Thank you, Brendan Lawler and Rachel and Donna McSweeney. Great to see some answers there in terms of increasing online sales and leads. That's absolutely correct. And greater exposure, absolutely. In terms of using these different digital marketing methods and channels, the greater exposure piece is definitely front and central to what any business wants to do today, especially with the amount of competitors that are out there in the market across many different verticals, especially for retail. So getting started with search marketing. So with search, my bread and butter, my everyday job, and there are plenty of things that can be done. So we've got here a very quick image to show to you the search SERP, what we would call. So the search landscape when you go to Google search and what populates after you type in a search query in the search bar. So you can see here that we've got our search query in the yellow. We've then got our paid text and shopping ads being those image-based ads at the top. And then you can see we've also got the organic search listings, like we mentioned around SEO. So where this is unpaid and organic. However, of course, we know that we do need to look at trying to make sure, as per the exposure piece, that we are front and center and that your ads are attracting all of the eyeballs that they can to make sure that the consumer is more likely, or increases the likelihood of them choosing your product or service. Now, within this, we also must be aware that we need to make sure that all things are equal in terms of the landing page quality, the ad copy in the ad, having site links, as you can see here under some of the text ads, and having ratings that you can also see on the shopping ads. These are all features that support a further built out ad that lets, again, the consumer have more information, understand the product a bit better on first glance, and also have some credibility in there with either some ratings or reviews. And how to get started with search engine optimization in terms of the unpaid element. Signing up for Search Console is your first place to go. So submit your content to Google, you monitor how you're doing in search, and you can get alerts sent to you on critical issues to fix. And helping Google find your content, you would submit a sitemap, promote your site online and offline, and share new content frequently. And third, help Google and the users, of course, more importantly, understand your content. So creating unique and accurate page titles, create good titles that attract the consumer into the exact product or service you are offering, that it's relevant, and also using heading tags to emphasize important text, what you really want them to lean in on. Search engine optimization tips for success. So looking at running keyword research, what keywords are essentially the most relevant to your product or service, and how to include these in your SEO activity. Making sure that you publish useful, high quality content. And I would love to over-index on the word useful here, because I think we all know that as we go to Google search every day to search for whatever it is we may need or want, we like to see high quality landing pages when we do click through. We like to see useful content that's relevant to what we have put input as a search query. And then we like to hopefully find our option that we're looking for off the back of that. So the third point here on making web pages search friendly is really critical, again, to reduce things like bounce rates, which is people falling off site and going elsewhere to the second best option, and equally just keeping them engaged on your site, or having the engagement in the ad copy to first get them through that click through. And of course, customers are searching for local businesses more than ever. And I think we've all seen that over the past year, and that is currently growing and growing at the moment. So again, making sure that you're present in terms of people knowing where you're based, having a contact to get through, the opening hours, highly critical. I think even anecdotally myself, you know, when you don't see things like opening hours or a URL listed or potentially a contact number, it does potentially urge you to go to the next option on the search landscape. And that's all down to agility and speed, because we know that the attention span now of the consumer is getting shorter and shorter. We want information faster and faster, especially, you know, when we look at the fast moving pace of the world today, and how people's expectations have changed as well, even when you think about deliveries of products, services, things like next day delivery, etc. So having a very accessible and active page, updating your business info, adding photos to make it again more relevant, adding maybe a virtual tour or reviews. These are all pieces that help shape that puzzle together for a consumer to be more leaned in and to choose that avenue. And again, it's down to accessibility, that piece around contacting, directions, and the location of the business. Is the website tag that you see on the slide here linked up? Is it easily accessible? So these are all fundamental. Just to take a look at the SEO versus the SEM side of things for a minute. We're going to take a look just very clearly what the differentiation is between these. So again, SEO, the search listings are at no charge. You would optimize by keyword level, but then it may take time to rank in this space and come onto the first page of Google. Whereas when you look at SEM, which is search engine marketing, you would pay for the search listings by way of bidding on the keywords. And then you would look at other things like the quality within the ads, making sure that all of those being top notch will get you onto the first page straight away. So how to get started with the paid side of things, search engine marketing. So creating a Google Ads campaign in the Google Ads interface is the first place to start. And you can go simply to Google Ads and you'll be brought there to the login page through search. Simply selecting a campaign type that you would like to set up and create in a matter of minutes and selecting the campaign goal. So whether that's to drive traffic to your website, whether that's to drive leads, you name it, you can select it. Picking the right keywords is the next piece of the puzzle. So adding keywords that align to your business goal, but also to the actual product or service, and making sure that that's highly relevant. Managing different match types and refining with negative keywords as well. So that's also an option. Putting almost exclusions in place there. And writing a compelling ad. So this is where we think about storytelling. We think about the journey that we want our consumer of your business to think about when they think of your brand, your business, or your service. To focus on the actual user benefit that the customer would get by going with your business, product, or service. The copy, and by ad copy, what we mean is the text that comes up at the very initial front stage that the consumer meets the eye with straight away. The copy that appeals across devices, make sure that that's suitable for mobile, for desktop, for tablet, and how, again, you can lean in the user. Focus on the headlines and imagery where relevant and applicable. And again, implementing all ad extensions. So all of the ad extensions, again, will bring that ad to life that bit more. It will provide more user info and more detail, again, on first glance. Are there any questions at this point? If so, please, as noted, feel free to populate the chat box here. And we'd like to keep this nice and engaged. So if there's anything you'd like to ask, or even any insight or tip you found useful, or anything that, let's say, almost didn't work and that you learned from, please do feel free to share with us here in the wider group, so that it can be shared across the full ISME group, and some learnings may come out of this as well. So from Dermot Crowley, we have a question. Is it possible to find which keywords users used to find your site? So what is possible, Dermot, is you can pull what's called a search terms report, and that's in the UI. So yes, we'd be able to identify there what were your top search terms that users queried to get to site. And it's a really useful way of optimizing your activity, but also checking this every couple of weeks, and again, shifting activity on that basis. So yeah. And as questions come in, I'll move into the display marketing side of things, which is another really exciting area and very, very simple to set up. So what are display ads, first and foremost? So you're all likely privy to these. As we all explore our sites, we can see often a couple of different ads streamed down the sides of different articles we read, different blog posts. And actually, it's a really, really effective way of, again, getting the user leaned into an ad where they're already leaned in and engaged heavily in a particular article they've chosen. So how to get started with display advertising really is, again, all about going to the Google Ads UI, selecting the campaign type display, and then selecting your goal. Choosing the right targeting is pretty critical here. And what's featured in the UI is called the display planner. That allows you to understand what type of budget you might need to reach the right demographic and size of audience, and equally to make sure that the right keyword targeting is optimal there. Use things like placement targeting. And what that is do you want to place an ad, for example, on the Daily Mail? Do you want to place an ad, for example, on the Telegraph? All of these various different placements, which are these article spaces and many other websites, hundreds of thousands of them to be exact, are your placements. You can exclude or include whichever you like. And topic targeting as well. So topics and related topics, things you choose relevant to the business. The ad creative. So because display ads are visual, having the right language, having catchy copy, And having very clean and simple imagery are fundamental to display ads. Again, we want to entice somebody in and not overcomplicate the image and steer them away. So having a compelling call to action of why the user should actually click through this ad is fundamental. And that's where we see really best-in-class ads working. And display tips. So understanding your customers, again, is key here. The placements that you'd like to use, and also looking at remarketing. So you may know that some of the key areas for display would be the remarketing element, where you can essentially remarket to users via audience lists that you've collected previously, and make sure that these are pushed out to the display ads on the front of various different articles. Because again, the user is leaned in here, but you've also collected that user insight from another area and collected that via lists. And again, remarketing is simply creating another area for the customer to see the ad, again, reinforcing your message and hopefully driving a higher likelihood to convert. And testing and optimize is key as well. So testing is fundamental to any advertising to understand what works, what doesn't. And optimizing based off what does and doesn't work in a test of maybe 2 to 3 weeks of running your ad is the best next thing to do. And we would advise that you check on this daily, but also you set a good timeline for you to check in and optimize your ads based on what the data learnings have brought about. And before we get into getting started with social media marketing, we have a question from Brendan Lawler on the Google Search Console, similar to Google Analytics. So Kirsty, it'd be great maybe if you could potentially send in the 2 particular Google support links relative to the Search Console and also Google Analytics to differentiate between them for yourself, Brendan. These are 2 very different things. They have similarities, but Google Search Console is essentially about getting set up, making sure that your website's set up in the back end and that your business profile is set up accurately on search. But also then Google Analytics is used to analyze what you do have running and understand various different fundamentals of your actual consumer behavior. So those would be the 2 differences. And Aisling Roach has a question on what is the difference between Google Shopping and Google Merchant. So the only difference there, Aisling, great question, is Google Shopping is simply the product that you would have seen there on the image I showed a moment ago, where the carousel of images at the top of the search SERP show. Google Merchant is simply the merchant hosting that. So for example, any other retailer that shows an ad here, they will be just classified as the Google Merchant. So essentially Google Shopping and Google Merchant are 2 different things. Maybe this is coming in from the Google Merchant Center, which we would note as an MCC. And the Google Merchant Center is where you house and create your shopping ads, if that makes sense. And again, Kirsty can provide any views here in the live chat that you're all working through on any differentiation of those or particular support links that will help you dig a bit deeper. So to get started with social media marketing, we'll take a look at how social media can help grow your business. So if anybody does have some live examples or some learnings that they feel they've used social media, especially over the past year, to drive and grow business success, please do pop them into the chat. We would absolutely love to hear about it. But we do know the social media channels across the board can generate more sales. Again, this is all down to the great exposure that can be gained, as mentioned earlier in the live chat, and add value to your brand as well. It'll also improve your marketing because you are coming in with messages on these platforms secondary to the messages that you would have across maybe your website, blog posts, and your ads running elsewhere. We also know at the moment that up to 60% of the Irish population are active monthly social network users. So that could be spanning across the likes of Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. But we know that the Irish population are certainly leaned in here. So again, we've got a split view. We've got organic social media, we've got paid social media. So when we break this down, we look at organic social media in the way that views, actions, clicks are of no cost. We also see the content appears on your business profile and in people's news feeds. You can only reach, however, your friends and your followers in this space, really, and friends of followers. Paid social media, however, you pay for views, you pay for actions, you pay for clicks and posts on ads. Your ads do appear in more places, of course, through that, and you can reach anyone because this is done through the method of actual targeting. And again, defining your audience group that you would like to hit. People don't have to follow you in this instance. And how to get started. So a couple of key pillars here that I'd like you to look at. Define your audience. So who are they? What are they into? What influences them? And what are they usually doing online? So basically, again, looking at the different topics, content, interests, and that allude to that kind of behavior. Which social media do they use and when do they usually come online? We also know that choosing channels carefully. So business focus or lifestyle focus, start with one, test it, learn, try another, and use different channels with different strategies. So changing your strategy up via channel is always a good way to experiment. And things here, as we've listed in front, so identifying the audience, choosing the channels and going with tests, and then posting engaging content regularly. So almost that your consumer or your audience expect and know potentially when they're going to hear from you. And a couple of tips for success. So set yourself a goal, understand your audience, consistency and regular updates. And these are all, again, key to building your brand and making sure that people see a pattern and they become more leaned in over time. So just going to pause here for a couple of questions, because next we'll be discussing how to build a digital marketing plan and how to really put those pieces together. But before that, I'd love to answer any questions. We see one here from Aisling Roach again. Do the ad blockers people download block Google Ads? So on that, Aisling, there are a couple of things, and Kirsty's going to send into the chat a little bit about what ad blockers mean, and again, what this means with the whole change in the privacy landscape as well. So of course, as we know, with many changes that have come through the industry over time and many more that are coming through, we do need the consumer to, of course, opt into and accept consent, or let's say any tracking on site. So I think there's a couple of things in which we need to be conscious of here and we need to lean into. And what Kirsty's going to provide now is a little bit of a breakdown on what those ad blockers mean. It can be a bit of a complex area, but it will showcase exactly how to manage that and how to manage activity around it as well, and what it means for tracking and the downloading or non-downloading, or the opting in or the opting out of ads or personalized ads on websites. So if there's any more questions, please do feel free to populate. But in the meantime, we will move into the digital marketing plan. So again, this is an area that takes a little bit of time. It isn't something that's going to happen overnight, and it is definitely a journey. So do think about it like that. A lot of testing, a lot of thoughts, a lot of past insight from your business models, your business plan, built all around the key objectives of what you want to drive within your business. So objectives would be generally in and around the type of traffic sessions you might want to achieve in a year, in a month, the type of revenue that you need to hit, and weighing up there everything from margin, profit and loss, and how you need to work through that throughout the various different months. There's also, of course, seasonality to be baked in. And we know that especially now during such a volatile time, where people are certainly buying more online, but also understanding demand and behavior is actually a little bit more tricky, given the fluctuation that has been seen due to COVID-19, given that we're all sprung into a very different place, being at home and again needing to essentially order online, or when we do have the opportunity to go into store, what that looks like too, and how you craft your strategy around making sure that you're hitting all angles that matter most to you, whether that be online only, whether that be an omni-channel focus, which would mean online and store, and even those moments where lockdowns do change and you need to pivot to driving further footfall back into your stores, and how you set out to do that in advance and set up logistically for that. But wrapping your digital marketing plan around this is key to, again, gaining more awareness in the wider public on that. And we all know that from awareness leads to consideration and then leads generally to action. And so when we can have that plan in place and we're executing it correctly, we can then allow for further business success and hopefully hitting these marketing goals or your general business objectives. So again, inviting anyone here to jump into the chat, feeding in what may have worked, what may not have worked, and what you see as maybe a great digital marketing plan. This could look different from anyone's point of view. It may incorporate multiple channels being used, such as TV, such as social media, such as online digital marketing in the form of search and shopping, where there's high intent, many different mediums, and also the offline activity. So whether that's a newspaper article, a billboard, there's a lot of different options out there, and they can all feed into these digital marketing plans in the way that you see fit for your business to succeed. So there are generally 6 steps to getting started with building out this plan. And we'll start with looking at business goals and objectives, budget and resources, which needs to be allocated in advance, who the audience are, who we want to go after, and deciding what channels you're going to use within that particular plan. Planning the activity is then the next stage, which would be your formats on these various different channels. Again, if you're thinking social media, that would be your posts. If you're thinking search, that would be your text ads or your shopping ads. If you're thinking social, again, YouTube as a form of blasting out that message through video with high audio. And last, measuring. So we know that measurement is absolutely fundamental to almost everything in terms of understanding, are we succeeding? Are we hitting our goals on time? And are we on track? So under measurement, we use generally our SMART framework. So specific, targeting a specific area for improvement within the business. Measurable, so quantifying or at least suggesting what is a measure of success here. Assignable, so specifying who's going to do what and assigning owners. And then realistic, stating what results realistically can be achieved in that time frame, given the conditions of the market and also the resources that are available to the wider business. And time, last, T for time related, so specifying when the result can be achieved and sticking to that. So to move forward, we look at the business goals and objectives. So what is it exactly that you want to achieve? And in simple terms, we've put an example in. So hi, I'm Max, I'm a hairdresser, and my business goals are. So business goal being to get more customers through the door, new and past customers, and make more people in my area know that my business in particular exists. So that's an example of a key objective. Examples of online objectives: increase traffic to the website, increase online sales, increase social media page likes or follows from customers, and increase online reach and awareness. And reach and awareness can be tracked through what we call impressions. An impression being where a audience or a consumer sees your ad, which is marked as 1 impression. So again, building that vast amount of eyeballs we want on your ads or on your media. That's another effective way to look at it in terms of measurement. Business goals as well should align with online objectives. So you have, again, back to our example of Max, we have our example of wanting to increase traffic into the hair salon, making sure that we get more new and past customers through the door. But how do we make sure that that resonates with our online objectives? So matching those two and aligning them should really sync up. When you look at that, you can see the way these correspond to each other. So our green in the business goal here, make more people aware you exist. The online objective corresponding to that being increase online reach and awareness. So again, getting videos out there, getting posts out there, getting particular ads out there where you can measure the click-through rate is what your online objective could be. A business goal number 2, sell more products. So how do you translate that to an online objective in your media front? That's to increase website sales. So to sell more, we can do that, of course, through the website, but your objective will be carved out there as increasing sales, or what we would call a conversion when you look at the sales through the AdWords UI. Getting found by more people, again, increasing your social media page or follows. The likes that come in here, again, that's just making sure that more people have visited your page and that they're aware of you. And getting more returning customers. So that again could be translated to online objective of increasing traffic to website, but you could also think about this as increasing your remarketing flow of activity. So those who've already purchased from you, creating a remarketing campaign and making sure that you either get them to buy from you again, or those that didn't fully convert, that you can reach them and retarget them in the hope that their likelihood to convert is high. So if there are any questions around business goals and setting them, or any advice here, I would absolutely be happy to answer any questions. So feel free to keep the chat going. But next we'll move on to budget and resource. So what is possible? I don't have a website yet. It's too much of an investment right now. Well, looking at that, we can look at very different methods like the SEO front and like the unpaid listings that you can do across social media. But do carve out what exactly is feasible for you and your business in terms of investing in a website or increasing investment on media, again, on the paid front, to make sure that all of that is set in advance so that you stay within the constraints you have. Audience as a third. So I'm targeting females in my local area. Most valuable consumers or customers are females above 30 years old for my business. They normally have children and work part-time. Most of them use Facebook. So again, kind of writing out what you think your best audience looks like, your most relevant audience looks like, similar to what we have here, what I've just read out on screen, and making sure that you understand the general base audience you have within your business service product offering. But also here, I would urge you to think a little bit outside the box. Are there customers beyond what you think your audience looks like that you could be reaching or that you could be tapping into? Just to make sure that, again, you're not limiting or hindering yourself from reaching more spread of audience segments that could potentially lead to more online sales. And again, of course, growing the awareness of your overall product offering or service offering. And the marketing channels. So which ones are right for you? Not all may be applicable to your business. There may be only a handful, or there may only be one. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I would definitely recommend that you look to test and learn. So instead of potentially going with every single form, and being aware there of the frequency as well, if you are using multiple channels, that's quite key to think about. If you are going with a lot of different marketing channels at one time, just be conscious of that frequency. So are you niche to the same person as you're targeting with multiple different messages across the board? Frequency is something that you can adapt and change over time. You can increase frequency. If you're potentially, let's say, launching a new message that is quite key to the market, let's say a new product launch or a new add-on or feature to your business. But keeping that optimal frequency as well, conscious of your budget and overall resource, is something to think about. And you have a question here, Diarmaid. Is it possible to get information on the users of competitors' websites? So no, it isn't possible to get information on users of competitors' websites. And again, just thinking back, we all need to be conscious as well of the privacy landscape and how things have changed there when it comes to things like GDPR and opt-in, opt-out consent on particular websites, which we now see more and more every day. So I think the best thing to think about here is, how do you build an audience outward with your media, and how do you create your own audience lists? Again, that's much more relevant, much more tailored, and again, will resonate most likely when you do push out that media against those audience lists. So to move back to our marketing channels element here, in terms of which ones are right for you, again, linking these up to your primary business objective, but also the marketing objective. And thinking about all of these particular areas like reach and awareness. What is the best way to do that? Using things like YouTube there to drive mass reach at scale from a particular video. Let's say, for example, using a bumper ad, which is 6 seconds long, very cost-effective way to reach. And that could be a great way of gaining reach and awareness. Whereas if you think about driving website sales, you could look at email marketing. You could look at email remarketing across the board, or even display content, social media as well. So think about those various different avenues of what would fit best, and what kind of assets do you have at your disposal. So do you have creative videos that you could use and deploy across social media, whether that be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube? Do you have collateral that is potentially only a couple of seconds long that can be featured in a blog post, or that can again be used across social media to gain that really key engagement? And then for increasing traffic, what is your landing page that really lands the message? So working on that, but resonating the message from your landing page, being your website, back to your channel activity is key to have those aligning up together. And so that when the user does maybe go through an ad or something through one of your marketing channels that you have pushed out, then when they do come to your website or your business profile, that they do actually see those match up. And plan your activity. So making sure that you focus on the detail and get strategic in this space. So making sure that everything is mapped out in advance, that you know when things are set and due to go live, and equally when they're due to end, and what kind of budget or optimization you are looking to put towards that. You can also over time optimize by shuffling budgets around where something works better in one area and maybe lagging elsewhere. You can definitely take a look at that weekly or bi-weekly, whatever that timing may be, and there's no exact guidance on that. But optimizing based on that is the best thing to do here. And of course, measurement. So how will you know if all of this has succeeded? How do you know if the plan is working well? So best place to start here again is using the SMART objectives framework. This will help you measure success. So your broad objective, back to the drawing board, was to increase online sales. Your SMART objective here would be to narrow that down to increase online sales by 20% within the next 3 months. Holding yourself to tasks like that allows to apply more rigor and make sure that you're using the likes of your Google Analytics for UI, your Google Ads UI, which is also a really key way of tracking measurement on sales or reach in terms of impressions, views, etc. Defining a very core objective like that 20% in 3 months is a really good way to do it. Otherwise, we could see that if we keep this at increase online sales, this could be something that we look at for the year, but we don't have a set defined number that we're working towards. And to look at another broad objective here, as we mentioned at the start, increase our brand awareness. So how do we get, again, more eyes on our brand, more awareness of what we offer, tell the story to the customer? Another key SMART objective would be increase your brand awareness on Facebook, for example, by growing our audience by 40% of new people. So new, which would be prospecting out to new users and new audience segments. Again, all trial and testing, which is the way to do it, but setting a defined percentage usually helps know Have you achieved it? And if not, what kind of work needs to be done, or what work needs to be amplified, tweaked, optimized to get there, with another redefined set time. So creating the digital marketing plan, back to our example of Max, hairdresser, at the very start. This is how this could look. So defining the goal, addressing what audience we think are best, channel, what are we going to look to deploy first? So maybe choosing 2 to start off with. What kind of activity are we going to put on those channels? What is our overall online objective here? But bringing that narrowed down within where we define a SMART objective. So things like increasing maybe our Facebook page likes, or increasing our bookings over the next quarter by 20%, and making sure that those are achieved. So in essence, this 6-step plan can be very simple, and when you look at what we have here on screen in terms of bucketing everything out and then making a simple plan come into action and executing against that with your teams, defining clear owners of who's going to own what, who's going to own which channel activity, and reporting back regularly on success, sharing ways of working that are succeeding, but also, of course, sharing things that do not come into the fold as working out. And those are all learnings as well. Those are as useful to know, so that we either avoid them in the future or implement what's working. A question from Fiona Ryan: what is UI? So UI, apologies for my internal Google language, is a user interface, Fiona. So essentially, the AdWords UI would be the AdWords display, so the interface that you would work out of, being the actual screen and the login. And you come up then with the full AdWords front end, which you can work out of and create your ads. So UI is essentially an interface as such. We also have another question from the Sligo Volunteer Centre. Thank you. Is it better to be on a few SM channels, but perhaps with less quality posts, if you think your market is spread across the channels, or should you come off some channels if you cannot excel at them? That's a really great question, and thank you for asking. So I think in essence, the best way to look at things is focusing your time and attention where you can excel best. So making sure that you are putting high quality content out. And if it means that that's going to take up more time and more resource, it's best to have more high quality content with a better, unique landing page, for example, or information, or even the post itself. Better to have higher quality and less of, as opposed to less quality but more of. So in this essence, less is more, if it is to trade off quality. And again, quality plays a big part, because I think in the background, this is what really helps a consumer decide whether this is a credible site to land on. There's a lot of things that factor in. So is it something that they want to proceed with? Is it appetizing enough? Is there enough detail there and reviews to make them feel comfortable with it and happy to proceed? So higher quality you have here really does entice that kind of influential decision to move forward or to drop off. So great question. Definitely think about those channels where your content that you do have ready, or you're in the making of, could sit best, or where those creative images, for example, can fit best based on the aspect ratio that you would have created these off, and what channels work best with them. So great question. And I just want to recap here on the 6-step plan, just reinforce it that little bit more. So the business goals and objectives, first and foremost, those need to be fundamental to any plan. Gives us a bit of direction. Budget and resources. So of course this can adapt and it can flex, it can change over time, whether that needs to be pulled back or you have additional budget to allocate over the weeks and months. But that is great to define at the start, so that everyone again stays within the constraints you have. Based on performance, then if you're seeing excelled performance or increased conversions or sales, for example, off the back of some search activity or some some different marketing channel activity, you could look to allocate more budget to that area to further enhance it. Audience, again, your audience are everything. These are the people your ads, media will go out to. So really, really, really fundamental to define this. The AdWords UI as well can really help you in that space. There are lots of different existing audiences to go after. So things like an in-market audiences where Google has already collated a group of people who, for example, are on the tipping edge of converting in a certain area. So for example, if you were to select a in-market audience in the health and beauty space, those would be a collective aggregated group of audience signals that you could use to target against, where Google has already collected of people's online behavior. We know that these people fall into a bucket that are essentially on the edge of conversion. And the reason we know that would be gathered by signals such as browsing on sites similar or browsing on sites that are in the area of health beauty category and maybe have gotten to the purchase page but have decided to drop off. So those signals really help inform, and the AdWords UI provides loads of different audience listings for you to test, learn, swap out, and basically tailor down what you need to define yours. Again, your channels, what are you going to use first? And plan the activity mapped against the channel. And of course, overall holistic measurement of the full plan is key so that every owner knows which direction of travel we're going in and how to amend or adapt and pivot in the interim. So we have another question in from Aisling Roach. In analytics, we see 50% traffic is coming from organic search. But when we click on this, it says keywords not provided. The keyword tool isn't that helpful as the range of searches were too wide. Any tips? Okay. So in terms of the keywords, in terms of trying to understand those better, Aisling, it's best to go into Google Ads, into the UI of Google Ads to actually understand the search terms from the search terms report. If that's not something you've pulled before, then Kirsty will hopefully very kindly here drop in a link to how to look at search terms report. That is likely your best way to understand the keyword front as opposed to looking at that in Google Analytics. Great to understand, of course, what split of traffic is coming from where in Google Analytics, but to get that more granular view on keywords, as you've mentioned, they're not provided in there. Definitely best to go into the UI itself. And of course, these can span very broad. It's then up to yourselves to decipher, okay, which ones are we going to look at, optimize towards. You won't get to optimize towards everything, of course, it can range in terms of cost, but it's then, yeah, down to yourselves to look at, okay, what could we use here? What would be best? Rachel and Donna Sweeney DeBarra have a question here. Using Squarespace for my website. I'm limited in what I can do with regards to SEO and using Google Console and Analytics. Okay, so I think with Squarespace, that is again another area slightly outside of our remit here today. So Kirsty, if you could please send on the official Squarespace link, that would be great. That will determine all the capabilities within Squarespace in terms of limitations, and then looking at what you can do. So I think Rachel and Donna, I think that the best thing to do there as well is also look at maybe what could you explore outside of the SEO area if that is becoming a bit of a limiting factor, because there is, of course, that option as well. And any other questions, I guess, are now open to the floor before we move into next steps and wrap up. So please do pass them along. So decide, I guess, on what your next steps particularly are for yourself. So we've obviously covered a lot of information today, but this isn't where it stops. The next steps are the most important takeaway from today. So have a think about what you should do next. Think about the 6-step framework that I've talked through, how you can actually put that into place for your own business. And even starting with step 1, that can sometimes be a real eye-opener, and it can really pave the path of the rest of the steps for you, in fact. So really do think about this and put a plan on paper. and just broaden the thinking around the channels, what could be used now, especially while much of our purchasing has gone online for the moment anyway. But also think about how does that change and adapt when the stores do reopen, various different services, industries reopen in the coming months. And again, how you're going to pivot across at that front over the year. So that is definitely the most exciting part in terms of what is next. But thank you all for joining today. It's been a great session, great engagement. And I think to sum it up at the end, we have another question in from Leisure Mats. So how much time should we spend a week on all being mentioned, and how many ads should be put up? Okay, great question, Leisure Max. This is really good in terms of understanding what works for you. So one business may think that it's best to put out a series of ads within a number of days. Again, base it on like what's launching. What message do you have to deliver? Is it something new? Is there something that you want to reinforce? But I think having a nice balance of messages going out to the audience, but also making sure that it's working for your business plan. So do you have the budget and resource to fund what it is you want to push out on a paid front? And what could you do on an SEO or an unpaid front to keep your message there in the balance? But I think there's no exact definition of how much time should be spent a week. I think that the really big thing here is dividing up and dividing and conquering between your team. So whether that be 5 people, whether that be 2 people, or even if it's on your own, making sure that the time allocation you have for this per week works, but also leaving time for discovery and thinking about the plan, not just crafting the plan. So no set time that can be spent on this per week. You could spend 2 hours a week. It's all about what kind of ambition do you have for the business? How many goals are you trying to hit? The more goals, the more time you'll need to set aside, and the amount of ads will line up to that. But try to keep a good balance of frequency. Where are you putting these ads versus how often are you pushing them out to that user? And you'll see things like frequency come in online with various different channels in the settings as well. So I'd like to wrap up there and thank you all very much for your engagement today. You can check out the further online series of webinars or our online courses through the link here listed on the screen through googledigitalgarage.ie, and also a new resource that launched last week, so smallbusiness.withgoogle.com, a really great toolkit there. You can see we've got some online success guides, a guide to COVID-19, and also a toolkit at your disposal. So make sure to check these out to further your journey. Like I mentioned, it doesn't stop here. And yeah, I hope you've all had an enjoyable morning and took a lot from the session. And thank you for your engagement. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.